facts are uncoordinated. Non-sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.
Oh,
Hey, tonight
That's
to
it.
introduce the show about middle-aged heresies, I have middle-aged Jerry. Jerry, take it away, man. Introduce the show for everybody tonight.
and middle-aged Dr. Misha Griffith. We're going to talk tonight. We're going to continue. About a month ago, we talked to you folks about middle-aged heresies, killing people, cutting people's naughty bits off, that sort of fun stuff that was all part of the growth of the Middle Ages. And we've got part 2, which covers basically from about 1345 until 1600, which is where I thought it gets political, it gets a little more interesting. That's all coming up. But first, I think we should have a quiz because you're a professor.
I do quizzes.
How about a quiz? Steve, can we have a quiz?
You know what? I do happen to have a quiz available for you. But before we do that, I got to introduce my co-host here because people may notice that's not Kyle. Unless Kyle got a long hair, let his hair grow over the week, which I don't think he did because I just saw him and his hair is still perfect.
Sorry.
But I have with me Lawrence Ufa from Milwaukee
Hello.
Atheist.
Hi, Lawrence.
Yay! People may remember him. He did the pirate episode. So Lawrence, you want to say hi to everybody? Kind of introduce yourself, and before we take this quiz, because I know people are going to really enjoy this quiz. Trust me.
I can't wait for the quiz. My name is Lawrence Ufa. I am the founder of Milwaukee Atheists. The channel is about early Christianity, ancient Near Eastern stuff. We really cover history and mythology from a historical context. So we have plenty of works that we reference from people that are much smarter than us. And we really try to be
Which is just about
as
everybody.
historically accurate as we can be. Yeah. We
No,
really
you have a
try
great
to be
show. We've
as
been on your show.
historically-
We were on your show,
Go ahead.
and it was actually very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Your-
Our
your,
weekly show is Atheist Sunday School. We read the Bible, talk about the stories in their historical context, try to figure out who wrote what, when, and why. It's a fun time.
Well, we're going to jump into this. People are asking about Kyle. Kyle will be back tomorrow, so he is missing everybody immensely. He's looking forward to getting back to the normal routine, but he has another night that he's going to be doing his own thing, and he's leaving it up to us. So a couple things. One, tonight we are going to hopefully break 19,000 subs. We are at 18,998. So we need 2 subs to get to 19,000. So that means you all hopefully can share this video on your Twitter, on your feed, any timeline, Facebook, G+, or whatever. Just get 2 people that you know to subscribe that actively watch. We like to have our subscribers be the ones that actually watch live and or after the fact and comment or whatever. So we want people that are actually engaged. There's no sense, I think, of having 100,000 subs if only 500 people are active. I like to have 20,000 subs and have 1,000, 2,000 people of those active. That would be amazing. So, we just got one more sub. Thank you, whoever that was.
Steve, why don't you offer an
Is that
incentive?
true?
Let's say the 19,000th subscriber gets an invisible friend for life. We'll follow you around. We'll take care of everything.
Can they name it? I mean, do they get to name their invisible friend?
I
or-
will be their friend.
Lawrence will be your friend for life if you are the 19,000.
Now prepare to never hit 19,000.
We're
And you
stuck
get an
now at
invisible
18,999. Actually, we just lost 20 subs after you said that, Lawrence. Why is that? No. No, we're just hanging at that 18,999. Okay, we'll get to that 19,000 and we'll announce it. But we're going to take a quiz tonight, and this quiz is based upon the show from last night. Now, all of my guests tonight and co-hosts are honest people, and they didn't watch last night, so they're not going to be able to fake this. And they were they were straight up saying, Steve, we didn't watch your shit last night. Okay, fair enough. But the rest of you guys that did, this quiz is going to be for you all as well. However, there is no right answers to this quiz. There's no wrong answers. Matter of fact, any answer is wrong. But Dr. Griffith is going to be the final say in the answer given, because this is actually a graded quiz. It really actually is. So, Dave, can we start this quiz? And I'm going to read it off, and hopefully you can see it. I know the resolutions are a little low for the internal. Can you guys read that? If not, I'm going to read it to you. I'll read it to you. Okay. So this is Mr. Intelligent Design's retention quiz. This is how much you guys retained from last night's conversation. Now, a lot of this was not on last night, but we know his material well enough to know the answers to this. So what the expected answers. So number 1, intelligence is problem, solution. Problem equals satellite, solution 1 equals satellite, and therefore solution 2 equals, these are your choices. Ready? Better satellite, supports, solution 3, or NASA.
Say what?
And you can actually see you can see it very clear in the outside chat if you need a. I'll read the answers again. Ready? Well, here's the question again. Intelligence is problem, solution. Problem equals satellite. Solution 1 equals satellite. Solution 2 equals better satellite. Supports, solution 3, or NASA.
You know, I'm gonna have to.
I can't do the Jeopardy song. We'll get me demonetized, even though I'll be off key.
I say better satellite.
Better satellite?
I'm gonna have to go with
All
NASA.
right.
That's my final answer.
Well, you know, I'm going to have to go with Dr. Griffith on this. He says better satellite. You have to confer amongst yourselves. But if you can remember your answer for later on when you go, yes, I got it right or wrong. Number 2, intelligence is the principle of supporting X to exist, survive, live, and then you fill in the blank. The blank is either in a certain degree of importance, it always acts upon asymmetrical phenomenon. In an uncertain degree of importance, it never acts upon asymmetrical phenomenon. In a certain degree of importance, and it always acts on symmetrical phenomenon, or in a sense degree of importance, and it never acts on some asymmetrical phenomenon.
I guess I'm stupid.
There is no right or wrong answer.
I'm confident that the answer is C.
Dr. Griffith, you want to go with C?
Yeah, I'm going with
I think
C.
C is good.
C is good. All right, let's go with C. Number 3, solution satellite, COBE, Cosmic Background Explorer, BOCE, COBE, NASA, X equals. COBE, NASA, BOCA, support, satellite, better satellite.
And a hard-boiled egg.
Decisions.
I say better satellite.
Better satellite. Yeah, let's go with better satellite again.
Better satellite again. All right. Number 4, problem equals COBE, solution equals, and that was a misspelling, but solution 2, problem, satellite, support, COBE, BOCA, or X.
It's gotta be X, Steve. It's just gotta.
Is that okay, Dr. Griffith?
I think it's Kobe because we like redundancy and repetitiveness.
You can say that again.
I just did.
Do you want Kobe or X? You're gonna take your lifeline from Lawrence there? Or are you gonna go with Kobe?
Yeah, Lawrence gets that one.
Okay. Number 5, Agent Stone equals egg, solution, toilet paper, problem, X, intelligence, or satellite.
See, it's like one of those scantrons, you know, that you hold up and you kind of squint at it, and then you see the little pattern coming in. You think, oh, well, I'm missing a few little black spots there. I'll just fill in some black spots.
That's exactly what it is. Yes. So which black spot do you want to
sure
fill in
where
here?
I am right now.
None of us know where we're at right now.
Well, I see.
Agent
The stone is obviously the agent stone is the one doing the falling if the toilet paper is too much. So I'm going to say, well, no, you keep adding the toilet paper, which is the intelligence. I'm going to go for solution.
Solution. Okay.
See, I would have picked Dwayne The Rock Johnson, but that's just me.
We're going to add that in. I think that's going to be a write-in.
Okay.
Number 6, stone equals satellite, box equals solution, non-box, satellite, egg, support, NASA, X, or intelligence. And yes, the live chat is actually playing along with this. Good for you, live chat.
We are thinking outside the box,
We
inside
might
the
be losing
box,
our
around
picture.
the box.
My system is not responding.
This may just be the hardest question on this quiz.
We've got
Doesn't
10
get any
dislikes
easier.
already.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, we got more dislikes than like. Or not,
No,
not quite,
yeah.
but we're getting there.
I'm gonna go with
I think
solution.
Oh, never mind.
You know what? We're gonna let Dave pick this one. Dave, you pick this one because I think Dr. Misha's brain is probably fried at this point.
I think.
Are we?
egg
Yeah,
works.
I've gotten as far as I can get in the doctor in the Mr. ID.
Okay, Dave, you decide.
Are we frozen?
I got egg.
Nope,
Yeah,
we
they're
can
frozen.
still see
They
it.
need to refresh.
You said egg.
Yes, I said egg.
Okay.
You want to get it?
Number 7, reinforcing equals X, strengthening, solving, supporting, or satellite. Lawrence?
Satellite. Always the satellite.
Satellite. Okay, I heard satellite. We're gonna go with
Strengthening.
Jerry. Nope, Jerry gets
Okay.
that one. Satellite. You're too slow, man. We got to get through this. 8, intelligence equals problem solution. NASA engineers, satellite supports, so support X or intelligence. Anybody?
What do you think? NASA
Boy,
engineers are always good.
let's go. You're gonna go NASA engineers?
Well, I guess so. Nothing
Oh,
else.
why not? Go with
Right?
solution.
Let's do it. Nope,
Or
Jerry said
intelligence,
NASA
whatever.
engineers. Number 9,
NASA
what would change his mind? Proving non-intelligence equals intelligence, proving evolution, proving intelligence, or proving science. Wow, come on. You guys might be able to get this one right.
Well, there's
Is it-
intelligence.
is it evolution?
and science are the same thing. So maybe that's 2 for 1. We're going to say both science and evolution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can't. It's won't let you.
Have
You
we
got to pick one.
frozen? Or?
Yeah, I'm frozen. I'm going to have to.
Yeah, you guys are gonna have to come back in. But before you do, pick evolution or science.
Pick evolution.
Science. Yes.
Science. Awesome.
Science.
And last but not
Science.
least, number 10, young Earth creationism is one example of counterintuitive natural phenomenon, intuitive non-natural intelligence, intuitive natural phenomenon, or counterintuitive non-natural phenomenon.
Intuitive natural phenomenon. is
No,
what he would have said.
counterintuitive,
Of course.
non-natural phenomenon.
Oh, we got a
No,
fight going
but
on. now.
Counterintuitive, non-natural,
He-
non-phenomenon.
He thinks intelligent design is intuitive, almost by definition.
Oh,
But is it natural or non-natural? Because technically it's supernatural, which is non-natural. So is that an option?
See, Jerry, gets it. Jerry, you get
Intuitive,
this.
non-natural.
Awesome.
I could go distribute fertilizer for the amount of BS I spread. Yes.
Let's all see how we did here.
We are going to go with intuitive non-natural intelligence. Now the fun part. We get to grade this. Ready for this? Brace yourselves.
Are we on?
Okay.
that
You
score.
scored 20%.
Hey, I got it right.
This is one test. No, I'm telling you, this is one test. The higher the score, the dumber you are. You really want to score really low on this particular test. So 20% is, we're all brilliant in here, is what this is saying. So the correct answers was better satellite. In a certain degree of importance, it always acts on symmetrical phenomenon. Better satellite. X, solution. Egg, reinforce satellite. No, wait. Those are the ones we picked. See, here's the answers. In an uncertain degree of importance, it never acts on asymmetrical phenomenon. Correct answer is Kobe, satellite, supporting, NASA engineers. You got that one right, man. That's good.
That's the two.
See, he gets
that we
that
got
group.
right. We got everything.
Yeah,
wrong.
proving non-intelligence equals intelligence and counterintuitive natural phenomenon. So I think the closest we get to understanding Edgar is Jerry here. Yay. Good job. All right. Can we go into the actual subject now? Because
Give me a second. I got a little technical adjustment here. So keep chatting here for a second.
Okay.
okay, I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. We just hit 9,001 subscribers. Thank you all. Yay. Over 9,000. So
9,001?
19,000. I'm sorry. 19,001. We were at 19,002, but somebody unsubscribed in the last 10 seconds.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
After that quiz, I don't blame you. I really don't. So how did the live chat fare? Did they do okay? Did you guys kind of do a mental thing in your how many percent you got? Somebody says they got 300% right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
300%.
I guess
Wow.
yeah,
That's
300%.
counterintuitive.
That's some intelligent
it's-
design right there.
That is supernatural causation and intelligent design because, as we know, Mr. Intelligence thinks that you can have probabilities that go up to 3. It's over 9,000. All right. So I think we're getting them back here. Yay!
There we go. Yes. We're back.
He's back.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So let's dive into it. If you guys want to kind of tell us where you left off as far as the middle-aged heresies, and yes,
Previously,
there's a play on words.
middle-aged heresy. Are you a middle-aged
What is
heretic?
middle-aged, by the way?
Yeah, essentially.
Do you guys know what age middle-aged is anymore? Has it been reduced? Or has it been
Well,
increased?
We're hoping and praying that 60 is the new 40.
My thought
Yeah, I'm
is that
good with
middle
that.
age is however old you are until you can comfortably say I'm old. So if you feel like you're not old and you're 70, go for it. It's like you don't get much other respect, so take what you can get.
I'm going to agree with that, actually, because I definitely don't feel middle-aged, not by any stretch of the imagination. But all right,
still
let's
very
dive
high
into this.
Feel
then.
old.
He's really immature.
All right, Misha,
Yes.
Oh,
why don't you tell
I'm
us
sure he is.
about this guy? And why is it gray? Oh, okay. Okay.
There you go.
By the way, I'm just going to back up. We got as far as the Cathars and the Flagellants. We have to drop back a little bit because there's a good story here.
Right. Okay. So, when we last were talking, we were talking about basically what was happening with the Black Death. And that was the heresies that pop up after that one are kind of bottom up. They're just kind of regular people trying to cope with everybody dying. We're all dying here. What do we do? And that was, of course, their answer was beating themselves into bloody pulps. But there was a strain of heresy that starts with the creation of the universities. The University of Paris and the University of Bologna being the first two. In that, you've got a bunch of your basic eggheads. Well, no. You've got people becoming doctors of philosophies, doctors of theology. Well, not doctors of theology. Yeah, doctors of theology. Doctor of philosophy, doctor of theology, doctors, medical doctors, such as it was, and Juris Doctors. So you had that choice of what you wanted to study once you got into the university. But they all focused on one thing, and that was logic and rhetoric. And they're pulling out good old Aristotle and all of the old Romans, mainly the Roman logicians, and trying to figure out everything that's going on. And one of the great professors, practitioners, teachers at the University of Paris was a fellow by the name of Peter Abelard. That's this guy. That's kind of a newer picture of him.
It's also, I'll see his face. There we go.
There you go. And Peter Abelard worked with mainly the dialectic. In that, well, Steve, you know what the dialectic is.
Yeah,
Thesis
dialectic
plus
for
antithesis
conversation.
equals synthesis.
Yeah.
Because Peter Abelard's trying to work with the system known as scholasticism. At these universities, their textbooks for learning grammar and rhetoric and logic are, of course, the old Greeks and Romans. But they're dealing with Christian theology. So scholasticism had to be joining those two together so they made some sense. It was very difficult to do. That's why Peter Abelard and his dialectic worked so well, because he was coming up with, in essence, synthesis, which meant one side didn't win over the other side. You were creating something new, which was pretty radical at the time, because when you came up with something new, you ran the chance of creating heresy. And this is what Peter Abelard had a tendency to do. In fact, he was forced to burn his own books, start a fire and burn his own books. Anyway.
Early dumpster fires, yes.
Early dumpster fire, yeah. for the things that he was
Is that how it all
writing.
started?
Pardon?
That was and Luca of all dumpster fires. Was that the beginning?
Yeah, that was perhaps the earliest dumpster fire. He got
One of the
into
early
quite
ones.
an argument with the dog, as I recall.
What?
St. Bernard.
No, Saint Bernard. Yes, Saint
Different
Bernard.
St. Bernard?
Yes, it was Saint Bernard. Had the ear of the Pope and got Peter Abelard in a lot of trouble. But that wasn't the big trouble that Peter Abelard got into. That was the simple trouble that you could just burn a few books and everybody's kind of happy, so to speak. No, Peter Abelard fell in love with a lovely young lady named Heloise, and they secretly married and had a child. And Heloise's protector was one of the main canons at the Church of Notre Dame.
This, by the way, is a
Paris.
romantic era image.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't know what they look like.
We don't know
The
quite
story
what they
that
look
she's
like.
about to tell you got so popular that people are paying, oh, this wonderful tragic love story. Wonderful love story. They loved each other deeply. Why was it tragic? I think you're about to tell us, aren't you?
So the Heloise's uncle was not really happy that Heloise and Abelard had married, and so Abelard has an idea that something bad is going to happen to Heloise, so he secrets her away to a convent, hides her away. But Heloise's uncle hires a bunch of thugs to grab Peter Abelard, beat the crap out of him, and then castrate him forcibly, so that this is not going to happen again.
We have castration in our last
Yeah, I know.
episode.
We're into this.
This
End
is
the
like
patriarchy
2 episodes
now.
in a row that you've been talking about castration.
Okay.
We should prepare ourselves when you guys come on for no.
Yeah, you don't understand. You're the only female here. The rest of us are kind of going,
Yeah, I know. I love the wins factor.
I'm so glad
But
I'm
Abelard-
drinking for this.
I
Abelard
need to be.
survived. Yeah. Abelard survives, and they keep sending letters back and forth, these love letters, these elegant love letters that they never see each other for the rest of their lives, but they send these love letters back and forth. And they're not published, but they're passed around at the time. They become the big romantic story of the ages, these letters between Heloise and Abelard. But the thing is, they are not just talking about romantic love, they're talking about all sorts of interesting philosophical ideas too. So it's really kind of a geeky sort of a love affair. But it's Abelard that's going to start kind of this tradition going with trying to figure out how to express God in terms of logic and rhetoric. And it's going to be a bumpy road.
He was followed by somebody, and Steve, I think you're going to be able to help us a little bit with this next individual, which was not that guy, that guy. I'm about to show you this picture of Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas, of course. You guys
Aquinas,
understand him?
of course.
So Aquinas,
Dr. Angelicus.
Dr. Angelicus, I would love to have you guys chime in because I'm not as up on him as I should be. But one of the big things that this man did was he tried to incorporate Aristotelian logic and philosophy and blend it with Christianity. He had this saying, which he got in trouble. He was threatened with being charged with heresy. As you probably know, today he's a saint, so somehow he escaped the charge.
Yep.
But his comment was, hey, all truth is truth. Deal with it, which is kind of cool. I kind of wish a lot of churches and religious people took that attitude today. You know, this is truth. No matter who said it, we're going to incorporate it. But Steve, could you fill us in a little bit on Thomism and help me out here?
Well, first, when you go back to the Aristotelian, I've noticed a surge of people trying to bring back some kind of Aristotelian type logics, because Aristotelian was a very simple way of looking at things, the more classical approach. However, there's a lot of problems with Aristotelian logic. They don't use it. They teach you Aristotelian logic, and they say forget it because you're never going to use it. So, Thomas Aquinas, what he liked to do was he came up with a bunch of arguments for the existence of God, none of which are really that convincing. They're mainly to keep people that have a belief in it reasons to believe, and they call it Aquinas' 5-way things of argument from motion, argument from contingency, argument from first cause, and things of that nature, which are predicated upon Aristotelian concepts. But we know now that that's antiquated, and so most of Aquinas's metaphysics. By the way, I have a book that thick on Thomas Aquinas metaphysics. I've opened it like 4 times. It's my roommates. It's that I don't understand it. It's just bizarre, right? But back then,
I feel better.
You know, he was.
You don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's deep stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot
The
of
whole
later.
ideas of transubstantiation.
Sorry,
Lawrence?
Go ahead,
Oh,
Lawrence.
I was just saying that a lot of the later developments in theology were just so out there. I mean, you had to understand so many basic concepts, and then they had to, add some stuff on top of that and some stuff on top of that just to kind of keep their beliefs together. It gets pretty nuts.
Yeah, and
Well, but
they're go ahead.
Well, the whole idea
ahead,
was that
Doctor.
respect for authority, that the philosophy of the ancients, that was right, and you could only build on it. There was no way you could tear it down and get rid of it.
the other thing is when you even with Aristotelian logic, if you start with a premise that is questionable, you can build anywhere on it. And one of the reasons we were bringing up Aquinas is because much of the later medieval heresies came into conflict with things that he formulated. And as you say, Steve, I don't fully understand everything this guy was saying, because it's like, wait, how'd you get that from there? But so Aquinas did codify a lot of the beliefs, a lot of the things that to be a Christian in the Middle Ages, you had to accept: transubstantiation, infant baptism, the doctrine of the Trinity, many other concepts.
Mm-hmm. And he had the perfect God of the gaps attitude. If we didn't understand it, it was still a mystery. And we'll just leave it at that.
But here, a lot of them were approached it that way too. Like Descartes was the same way. Descartes started from the principle that God existed, and that we couldn't have any kind of Descartes demon talking to us because God wouldn't have allowed it. And Thomism starts with this ontological approach as well, that the universe, if we don't understand it, then it's just the mystery of God's, and we are limited in our approach to it. But again, he's based upon his philosophy and his metaphysics on a very, very naive approach on classical physics, which we know doesn't really apply any longer because of quantum. So most people that fall into Thomism, I don't think have ever opened a book on quantum, because it obliterates most of it, right? Matter of fact, most of the principles of logic that people hold dear to aren't even in other forms of logic. Aristotle himself argued against the law of excluded middle. The law of non-contradiction doesn't have to apply. You can have types of logic called paraconsistent logic, where you don't have the principle of explosion. So these are all antiquated things, but we've seen this resurgence of Thomists who just think that Thomas Aquinas is the best of the best, and he is the quintessential archetype of what a Christian apologist would have been. And in some ways, he probably was.
We did a video recently on Aquinas's 5 ways, and yeah, they came flooding into the comments.
Back then, they were probably very good arguments. Back then, they were very convincing to people, probably, but not so much anymore.
Okay.
Well, but remember, they had no way to compare texts. That was a very important problem. Was that if you wanted to read a book, there would have been a copy of that book at a monastery 300 miles away. So you travel over to the monastery, read it, and then if you wanted to compare the text to somebody else, that book was somewhere at some other monastery 300 miles away. You had to go, and maybe you didn't have a notebook, maybe you had a wax tablet, maybe you had to memorize everything, but the idea of textual criticism and comparing text could not happen. Not going to happen until the printing press, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Then how did they do the dialectics at the time? Because normally when you have an actual type of dialectic, somebody will come across with an idea, or we'll call that the thesis, and then the next person will try to poke holes in it to find problems with it, right? And then the resolution of it is, like you said, the synthesis to try to combine the thesis with the counter thesis or the antithesis. I don't know the terminology, but the reaction to that thesis. How did they do that if they weren't able to have all the material in front of them to combine these things to synthesis?
Public disputation
and memorization. You were to get a doctorate, you were expected to memorize huge volumes of book.
Yeah, you were taught by rote to memorize everything. You had a mnemonic of counting on your knuckles. So oftentimes when you look at medieval paintings and you see people holding their fingers strangely, they're actually using their mnemonic to memorize, to count down what they have got memorized. But they learned it by rote.
Wow.
All those, you know how you go into a lawyer's office and they've got all those books on the wall, you know, all those beautiful leather books, those had to be memorized. They were not portable unless they were in here.
Wow.
Okay.
That's amazing.
So that's kind of the stage we wanted to set as we get into late Middle Age heresy, which takes on some very different things. But to me, and you can argue this, we've actually had this argument, there is one event which triggers the difference between early or Middle Ages and late Middle Ages, the revolutions, the reformations. And that was...
go for it.
Go for it. It was these guys. Yes. Bubonic plague. So named because everybody developed big boobs all over the...
Boobos.
Bubos.
Bobos.
So the bubonic plague, and again, we're planning on talking a great deal, but you know, this was a big deal. How much devastation would you say it did, Dr. Misha?
Between 1/3 and 1/2 of the population of Europe died.
Okay, so where was God when this happened? This was a big problem, of course, and I think you guys know this, but just setting the stage, you know, God didn't help.
Nope.
And so suddenly some of the central tenets of Christian faith, of dogma, of everything was questioned, and you start to see really weird heresies cropping up.
Yep. Yeah. That they basically, it affected everyone, and then it affected no one, and then it would come back, and then it would go away, and they had just no way of figuring out. I mean, there was one year that Milan, the city of Milan, lost one family. They were able to contain it, and then a few years later, it came back and killed thousands. So it was totally random, and random didn't work well in the Middle Ages. They did not think of this random access and random this and that.
This is, I just wanted to show this image because I love it. This is, of course, a group of medieval doctors who wore these funny masks that supposedly, I think they were more for keeping them from smelling death than for keeping their germs off of people.
They
those
stuffed
were called plague masks, right? Were those plague masks?
plague masks. Yeah, they stuffed things in the nose.
And it's just so creepy. I'm sorry, I just love that image. It's just, our son made one of those for a Halloween costume one year, and it was pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
I love the masks of the plague doctors. They're just fantastic.
Oops, wrong
They're
button,
creepy.
wrong button. There we are. So,
like it's something from a bad Doctor Who episode.
and I just wanted to just mention, somebody put this in the comments last week, said we were leaving out certain heresies last month. Whenever we did this last, we're going to do that. There's a lot of heresies. There's a lot of crazy people. We're just focusing on the good stories. Our purpose here tonight is primarily to be entertaining. A little bit of education is fine, but we're looking for good stories, okay? Fair enough?
Go for it.
Okay. Then let's talk about this guy right here. The Morning Star of the Reformation. John Wycliffe. John Wycliffe was a Don at Oxford. He was a very respected scholar in various ancient languages, and I don't know if he was actually a priest or not, but he
had to be a Don. Which was a church member.
At Oxford.
Yeah. You didn't have to necessarily be an ordained priest. You were a Don, which was a little bit lower.
So John Wycliffe, and this is around 1350, basically very shortly after the plague, comes along and says, we're going to look at things differently. We're going to look at religion differently. We're going to look at a lot of things differently. And when we talk about Wycliffe, we sometimes we include in that the things that Wycliffe's followers did. So it's not really clear. You know, there's the Wycliffe Bible, which was, quote, the first full English translation of the Bible, but Wycliffe probably didn't do that much of it, but his people did, his group did, and so it's kind of the Wycliffe movement, known as the Lollers, the barefoot preachers. The biblical translation, and I spoke with you guys a couple months ago about biblical translations. The translation that Wycliffe did was, what's the word?
Dull.
Bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was based on, he went to the Latin Vulgate, which was made by St. Jerome in the 4th century, and translated it into vernacular English, but English wasn't that codified then, so that spelling was different, words have different meanings. Because you don't have mass communication, you've got people living in different areas. So, you know, just 100 miles down the road, this word means something different to you than it does to me. So there was a lot of disagreement there.
But Wycliffe was very much against the corruption that he saw in the church. His contention was that if you were given a sacrament by a priest who was not up to snuff, and you often had priests that were illiterate, you had bishops who had purchased their offices. It was a practice known as simony. And so he was saying that a sacrament from a corrupt individual was not a sacrament at all. And so the church had to clean up its act. So he is aiming directly at the practices of the church and trying to get the leadership of England to come forth and ask for that, insist on a much more robust celibate order for the priests, sort of thing. No,
Sorry.
No, not celibacy. No.
I'm going to jump in here because these guys do run together a little bit.
They run in.
Okay. So let's look at another image here, because Wycliffe sent out his followers called the poor preachers. They were also called just the Lollards. And they went out wandering around, visiting the countryside. And Protestants like to talk about Wycliffe as bringing the Bible to people who the Catholic Church didn't want to have the Bible in their own language. This is a little misleading also, because people couldn't read any language. You know? I know that we look at a couple hundred years later, in around 1600, England had about 20% literacy. So I'm sure that in the Middle Ages it was far lower. So now they could pull open the book and they could read it to people, and that was kind of their thing. So the church in England, and I'm sure you guys know about the concept of the third estate. The church was just a central part of the power structure, and there have been struggles over the centuries over who has temporal power, the church or the crown. Does the crown work for the, and this went back and forth.
Right, because the church justified who was king, and the king needed the church to justify their rule.
Okay, so but basically everybody's dying.
Right.
The country is poor. The rich people don't pay taxes. God hasn't helped us, so let's reformulate God. So he went back to the Bible, and basically he threw out everything that he couldn't find really good examples of, really clear in the Bible, which is a lot of central church teaching, which is, and we get into this issue here, and I'm going to offend a few people a little bit, but the church power structure often involves things that aren't specifically in the Bible, but this is kind of how the priests and the power structure stay there. You know, the Bible doesn't say you have to have a Christian funeral. Nope. But you need a priest to perform a Christian funeral. That means you have to give to your priest. He has power in your community. You with me here? Yeah.
One of the basic seven sacraments.
Okay. So there were the 12 conclusions of the Lollards, and Wycliffe and his followers went out and took these 12 conclusions, and they nailed them to the door of Westminster Abbey. Sound familiar?
Yep. Yeah.
This is in 1350, I believe. Okay. I'm not going to read through them all, but there's a couple of them. First conclusion: the English church has become too involved in the affairs of temporal power, led by the bad example of the Church of Rome. Okay. There's a lot of other things. This is without scriptural basis. Transubstantiation, which is huge. Transubstantiation, I'm sure most people know, is the very Catholic dogma of that communion, when it's elevated by the host, it transforms from bread and wine into the physical body of Christ, even though it doesn't necessarily smell bad. So he said, balderdash.
Happens halfway down.
Well, there have been a lot of rationalizations over this over the years. Clerics can't hold secular offices. Prayers for the dead don't work. What they do, confession of sins doesn't work. Pilgrimages. Then here's one: priestly celibacy. Wycliffe said priestly celibacy is bad because it leads to
sodomy.
Told you we'd get a little sexy in here.
Okay.
Can never go
Yeah, we
wrong
were
with
hoping
sodomy.
Kyle was here. He could explain this to us.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Explain sodomy. That's for Candle, isn't it?
Oh, that.
Okay. Also, Wycliffe was very down on the arts and crafts, which are, the Bible does talk in places about graven images.
Yeah.
So this is one of the several themes that we get in various times about with these various heretical reformers is destruction of art, private property, and getting laid.
Right.
Those seem to be the big issues.
Yep.
Okay. So,
But wait, hang on one second. So he's literally attacking some of the more foundational aspects of the church with this.
yes. Yes, this is huge. And this is what 150 years before Martin Luther.
Yep.
This is threatening. And this is, I don't know how much the Lollardry is known, because this was a huge movement in England, strictly in England. And yeah, he's challenging all of the central authorities. He's challenging the authority of the priests. And he manages to live out his life and die relatively quietly.
Yep. He's one of the few. One of the few.
So who on earth would come after him? This guy. You want me to keep going?
Is that
That on the
Is that John
horse you
Ball?
can actually see,
Okay.
that is John Ball.
okay?
Can you tell us about John Ball?
Well, in 1381, John Ball and Tyler, by the name of Wat Tyler, are
What?
going. What?
What?
Wat? Yes.
Oh, that was his. What was his name?
Yes. It
What
was.
was his name?
Wat?
Are you going to tell me what
Yes.
was the man's name?
Yes. Yes.
What's
I
in
just
second?
did.
Who's on first?
Anyway. So
I don't know.
Come on,
I don't know.
Costello.
Third base.
Anyway, there's going to be a huge amount of mob violence. Part of it is going to be driven by the fact that they've just gotten with the Black Death, losing a third of the population. All of a sudden, you've got a third less workers. A third less workers means that their wages are going to start slowly going up, but not as much as they want. So you're going to get a mob asking for higher wages. And that's going to be led by John Ball and Wat Tyler.
Okay, but there was another issue here, and this was a curious one. Nobility didn't pay taxes.
Right,
The church didn't pay taxes.
right.
So who was left to pay taxes?
The entire tax base was based on the workers.
Tax the poor.
Tax the poor.
Does
So,
this make sense to you?
so with
It doesn't,
John
yeah, it doesn't seem
Ball
like a really good
and-
financial plan to tax the ones that don't have any money to tax.
Yeah,
We'll have to make it up in volume.
yeah, you make it up in volume.
Right.
So you've also got, along with these guys, the Lollards are coming in here and helping to support them. So they're kind of like the SJWs of the time, going and helping this mob. This mob is going to march on London. They're going to
I
kill.
want to cut you into here first,
Yeah.
here, which is the John Ball. We have a little
You
bit.
don't. No, you need the picture.
We need the picture. There's John Ball. John Ball, and again, this is a picture from probably within 100 years of the time. I love the way they drew suits of armor and things like that. Started out in Kent. That's actually supposed to be the Canterbury Cathedral back there. But John Ball was a very dynamic, charismatic preacher, and he had a saying that he said, which was, "When Adam delved and Eve did span, who was then the gentleman?" Basically, where in the Bible does it say there's nobility? A gentleman, that was nobility. So if there's no gentleman and there's no nobility back at the time of Adam and Eve, why should we have them now?
Right.
And that's when they decided, let's go march on London.
Yeah, and they were basically a bunch of pinko commies. Well, I mean, levelers.
Communism was part of the deal.
That was part of the
Basically,
deal.
owning everything in common. They started off with, well, we don't like the nobility not paying taxes and owning everything, and it progressed to, well, why shouldn't I have a shirt like this?
Yeah.
And Lawrence, what's that you're smoking? Pass it around. Come on, share.
Anyway,
I don't know if you'd want this. It's just a hookah, and Steve
Oh,
knows.
come on. We're trying to build some
that.
rumors here.
so
So that's an
anyway,
actual
they're going to
hookah,
march on
not a
this-
vape, but a hookah.
It's
We have
not
to
a
make
vape.
sure that we have this correct. It's not a vape. It's a hookah.
If you say it's a vape, I will punch you.
elongated. So they're going to get to London. They're going to I believe, kill the mayor of London, at least one archbishop.
Yeah, this was huge, and if to scholars
Thousands
of
of
English history, it's called the English Peasants' Revolt of 1381.
81.
Yes, this was big, and they basically started burning down everything between Kent and England, which is about 60 miles.
London, yeah.
Kent and London, about 60 miles along the way. They traveled. You get into this medieval knowledge, and numbers are very difficult. So they say, "Oh, there were 10 billion of them."
Yeah.
And so I don't believe the numbers, but we know
No.
there were big crowds.
Huge crowds. They make it to London, and they went to parley with the king, King Richard II.
Who was about 16 at the time.
Yes, he was a young lad, and his courtiers, and the nobles were not sure of how he was going to handle it, because he agreed to meet Wat Tyler and John Ball and the rest of the crowd out at this particular field at this particular time, and he would come and parley with them.
And the people believed, as they often do, that the church is corrupt. The leadership is corrupt.
But if we could just get to the king,
God appointed the king. The
Yeah.
king is obviously
the
just.
king's cool. If we could just get to the king and explain to the king what's going wrong, maybe we can fix this.
How'd that work out for you?
Not very well, because what's going to happen is that the king is going to agree to parley. The people all come out to the middle of the field, and the king had his troops hidden in the bushes around the field, and he gives the signal, and they all descend on the mob and start hacking away at it, and thousands are killed, and the
That's so
leadership
dishonorable.
is
Tyler was actually.
That's not how you do a
Actually, it was
parlay.
yeah
That's dishonorable.
he cheated.
Wat
He
Tyler
cheated.
himself was basically a gentleman standing next to the king. That's a picture of him being hacked to death. Said, how dare you approach the king in this manner, and chopped him to bits. John Ball they took out, and they did the usual: hung, drawn, cornered, pickled. Just the
He's a
usual.
bad king.
Poor guy.
Yeah, bad king. Yeah. So that's kind of where lollardry, and I think it's really important to have this background to understand the whole English nature and their attitude. And as I say, Protestants love to tell the story about how the English Bible was banned.
Right.
Although that was in part in response to this gentleman, who was then the gentleman. This is a character who actually appears in Shakespeare.
His name is John Oldcastle.
Yes.
He was a minor nobleman.
Yes, but he was, in Shakespeare, he's renamed Falstaff, but it is clearly the same character in every way. He was a very close friend of Henry V. He assisted him at Agincourt. He was there. He was a confidant, and he was very, a proper gentleman, very much in the character of Falstaff. And in the earliest drafts of Henry V, the character is actually named
Oldcastle.
Man of the Old Castle.
Yeah.
I don't know why he changed it to Falstaff, but Oldcastle then led a revolt. Basically, the Lollards got a hold of him, and they indoctrinated him.
Right.
Brainwashed, converted.
Yeah.
And he came to believe that the sacraments were bad. What have we got here?
As a minor nobleman, he could speak up to power. He could speak to the king. He could speak in a way that an average person or a priest could not.
But he also wanted to establish a commonwealth. And this is another theme that we see in some of these early heresies, is the development of movements away from absolute power of kings towards pseudo-democracy, at least democracy of the elites.
Mm-hmm.
But, it wasn't just we want freedom. It was we also want religious reform. And it was religious centered. And that's a picture of John Oldcastle in his final minutes. They love to take pictures or draw pictures of these things, I think, just to remember the gory stuff. And, it was terribly slow. You get the guy out there, they hang him,
Right,
and they say,
yeah.
hang on a second. Hold that.
Yeah, drawing while they're, yeah. Anyway, pictures are so much easier.
So, how are we doing so far?
The schism.
Oh, you guys are great. We've moved from transubstantiation to castration to drawing dead people as they flail and die. I mean, this is golden stuff for non sequitur.
Yeah,
Love
well,
this
we're
stuff.
going back to a burning, but actually, did you want to set the stage for the schism? Because I think that's awfully technical. And Go ahead.
Let me do it just the quick version. In the 14th century, while the Lollards are going on, while you've got the Peasants' Revolt, even throughout the entire Black Death, that period, there was a schism happening in the Catholic Church, in that the Pope had been kind of invited to live in France for a while. And this has upset the Italians, and the Italians wanted him back. And so it's going to be this back and forth between the Italians and the French and who's Pope, etc. It will eventually lead to one of the popes bringing the church and the whole format back into Rome from France, but he dies. There's a new pope elected by the bishops who are being threatened by the crowd outside. You better elect an Italian pope. So they elect an Italian pope and then hightail it out of town, get back to France and say, by the way, we elected that pope, that guy under duress. We're going to elect the real pope now. And so you're going to end up with two popes, one in Rome and one in France. And Europe becomes divided between those two groups. It's also exactly during the time of the 100 Years' War. And so, which is the 100 Years' War between France and England. So the Pope in Rome is being supported by the English king, and the Pope in France is, of course, being supported by the French king. So it is a major political nightmare, along with being a liturgical nightmare of you can't have two infallible popes. They're pew, 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 excommunicating each other.
The best solution,
crazy.
Why not have a third pope?
Yes. So the decision was they're all going to meet in Pisa in 1409 and have some, have a nice lunch and elect a pope and make the other two quit. So they elect a new pope, but the other two will not quit. So we have three popes running around, excommunicating each other, pew, 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 and doing all sorts of crazy nonsense. And so it's discrediting the church in the eyes of the people of Europe. They're looking like the bickering partisan nobles and royals that they so much dislike. So this is part of the reason why you see the growth of people like Wycliffe and the growth of people like the Lollards, is that the church basically looks corrupt at this moment.
It's kind of surprising that Christianity managed to survive all of this. And we're going to get into some of the reasons they did, some of the things that they did. But, this goes into the whole formation of where we are today. And Lawrence is the head of an atheist group. I'm curious how you're doing with this, if you want to contradict us on anything, or how are we doing here?
No, see, this is outside of my range. I usually talk about early Christianity and biblical history, so this is not something I am super familiar with. So I'm going to assume that you guys are on point.
Well, we make up when we don't know, but that's just...
Yeah, 90% of it, they're just making up as they go along. I wish I would have known this when I was watching Da Vinci's Demons, though, because I think that a lot of this would have made a lot more sense, because that was one brilliant series on Stars. If anybody's ever hasn't seen it, go check it out, called Da Vinci's Demons. But they were talking a lot about the different popes and Pope Sixtus something or other.
Yeah.
But there was one in France, one in Rome, and and I didn't know what the hell was going on, because I didn't understand the liturgy of the whole times. But maybe this would have made more sense watching Da Vinci's Demons.
But she's given you a summary. The story is very complex. There have been books written on it, and it's just they were excommunicated, and there was money under the table, and then you have a special friend. The king basically didn't like a pope, so he is believed to have had him whacked.
There's the stories are amazing, and of course this is where things like you get the papal palace at Avignon, which is in the south of France, which is the largest Gothic palace ever built, and it's amazing. We were
just there.
Yeah, we were just there, and it's so big. They had this treasury room that was, you cannot even imagine it. In fact, they didn't know what to do with all the gold. They were like lifting up the stones in the floor and tucking the gold underneath that, and so that, because they just didn't have any more room to put it. They were still finding caches of gold in this palace in 1875. That's how hard it was to find all of this gold. So anyway, so you've got three popes running around. What do you do? Well, if you're Sigismund,
Sigismund, I don't have a picture of him handy.
You don't
but
have
yes.
a picture of him handy. He was the guy that you saw at the beginning of the show. Anyway, he decides that what's best is to call a council, and he calls the Council of Constance. Constance, lovely town in Switzerland. Starts in 1414. And this is a huge conference. It's got hundreds of people from all over. And they're going to decide what to do about the popes. And they're also going to decide about what to do with some of the heretics running around. And so this is going to include what's going to happen at Constance is, number one, they're going to hold all three popes. Oh, you don't need to show that.
Well, just a
You don't-
second. This is okay. We're gonna a little sideline here, which is this is Misha at the Palace at Avignon. We shot a little video there for her class, for her history class. So that's the palace. It's really cool. That's the Pope's palace. She was there, did a little stand-up talking about, you know, this is where the Pope lives. Isn't this nice? Anyway, I'm sorry.
Anyway, okay.
Our vacation photos.
Back on
What
track,
else
yes.
did you guys want to see?
Yeah, that's great. No, we love that.
So back
Show
into,
more if you got them. I'm happy to look at those photos. Those are great.
And this
So-
is our breakfast.
Yes, and so what's going to happen is that they're going to basically put all three popes in jail until they agree to give up their power, and they elect a new guy, Martin V, and things go on bumpity from there. They basically take care of the Great Western Schism. But what's going to come out of the Council of Constance is that they're going to bring in a gentleman to make his case. This gentleman was a Czech, a Bohemian, by the name of Jan Hus. He's that gentleman in the black robe. Jan Hus was a priest, came from a very poor family.
Oops.
Oops.
Sorry, keep talking. Wrong
Came
button.
from a very poor family and wanted to become a priest because, well, they wore nice clothes. That's how much of a peasant he was. The priestly robes looked pretty nice to him. And so he not only becomes a priest, but he becomes a university professor and the rector at the Charles University, the big university in Prague. He also gets a hold of the writings of Wycliffe
Now I
and
got
the
to
Lollards.
pause and just say we can't go into too much detail. We did a documentary film on the life of Jan Hus about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
10 or 15 years ago. So we can get very bogged down.
We
but
can get very.
I want to
bogged
just talk about the main things, which was that Hus was Czech and very nationalist. He's still a hero in
Huge
Prague
hero,
today.
yeah.
They got statues of him everywhere.
Mhm.
I got my list here. He opposed the indulgences, which were going on then.
Right.
You know, Pope selling indulgences. You know this backstory. It's basically how you fund wars. Give us a little money, we'll get your relatives out of purgatory. Take care of it.
Yeah, the whole idea of you're committing a good work by giving money to the church.
He spoke out against simony, which is the process of buying a special bishop. If you became a bishop, if you were noble, you gave money to the church, you could become a bishop of a region.
You didn't have to be priest.
Really?
Nope.
Okay. And you got
Not
a
until-
percentage of the tithes coming in, and you could get rich
Yeah,
as a priest,
skimmed off
as
the
a
top
bishop. Okay. So they
Before
were
you
selling
sent
this.
it to Rome.
Mr. Hus wrote long treatises against that. He concubinage, which is basically the process of priests having girlfriends. He was
Right.
very against that. He has been held up by some as being a Protestant. He really wasn't. He was accused of denying transubstantiation, which he didn't.
Nope.
And one of the points that I've made is I think that Hus might have survived if it hadn't been for the fact that it was at this time the church was trying desperately to establish unity.
Right.
And that means getting rid of any resistance whatsoever. Hus was hugely popular. He spoke in the Czech language and the German language, which was languages were a little different back in those days. And basically,
Had translated the Bible into Czech.
not the whole thing.
Yeah. Came up with the little diacriticals.
Yes. We did write some of the modern version of the Czech language does trace to him.
Yeah.
Same way modern German traces to Luther.
Right.
But so I'm going to go back to this image for a second because what we got here is kind of relevant. King Sigismund. Oops,
Nope.
That's not the right picture. We we hire a technical director?
There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
King Sigismund, who's the guy on the throne here, and this is a picture from the late 18th century. No, late 19th century, I'm sorry. So it's a very romantic vision. King Sigismund.
I don't think that's Sigismund. Yeah, looks like Václav. Okay.
All right, that's King
Anyway.
Sigismund. That is the trial. That is in the temple at
Okay.
Constance.
Okay.
Basically said, okay, we're trying to resolve everything. Sigismund is the one who's convened the Council of Constance, and he calls them in and says, promises him a safe conduct.
Yeah.
You can come, present your case.
Present your case. Don't
Yeah.
switch off.
Don't switch yet? Oh, I just did.
Yeah.
Make your case, tell us what you believe, tell us what you want to do, and we will guarantee you safe conduct here and safe conduct back.
Right.
Which is a very kind thing and reasonable. So that Hus came, and as you see in this picture, he presented his case and, argued very well. And that was his trip home.
Yeah, they burned him at the stake
Yeah, he was
as a heretic.
He was toasted. He was which unfortunately for the church made him a martyr and led to something we're going to talk about. But I want to go back for a second and talk about one other thing which is interesting in this picture because it's going to come up again. The gentleman over here you see in the pointy mitre hat,
Which one?
this guy right here.
Yeah.
That is a gentleman by the name of, do you know it?
Is that Pierre Dailly?
That is
Oh.
Pierre Dailly. Do you know
Okay.
who that is, Steve? Does the name mean anything to you?
Oop,
Okay.
not a
Pierre
thing.
Dailly.
Oh, you're going to remember this.
I'm
part.
gonna tell the story very briefly. Pierre Dailly thought he was a great mathematician. He took Eratosthenes' circumference of the Earth and said Eratosthenes is wrong.
Okay, first off, you guys are familiar with Eratosthenes?
Yeah, of course we know
Is it-
Eratosthenes. Yes.
I guess you
Yeah.
do because you're flat Earth stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Eratosthenes
He's a lot flatter,
calculated
so
the
we know his
Yeah.
experiment with
percentage
the sticks.
It was damn close. Well, Cardinal Dailly saying this is a pagan doing the math. Pagans don't do maths as well as we bishops. He will redo the math and say, no, the Earth is much smaller.
about 12,000 miles in diameter.
Yeah,
about
it
half
was.
the
It was.
size.
His figures were ridiculously small.
So, by the way, the view at this time, since they hadn't been
Right.
around, but they did know Asia, there had been traders, Marco Polo,
Right.
they knew where China was. So the view was that you had Europe, and over here you've got Asia,
Asia.
and then over here on the other side of the world, at this vast ocean sea, which was maybe 10,
But
12,000 miles across.
But
Huge.
the good thing was you had the Canaries and the Azores, so they knew that coming west from Europe you had islands, and they knew that east of China was the Philippines and all that, and Guinea, the Malacca, and the Spice Islands. So the islands went east. So the thinking was, yeah, it might have been a vast ocean, but it was islands all the way, right?
Okay.
Right?
Well, there
Kind of,
were
maybe?
thousands of miles. So
Anyway.
Mr. Dailly's book was very popular.
Yes,
and
'cause
argued for
Dailly-
the 12,000
yeah.
diameter.
Because
Something-
Dailly says, no, that ocean is almost nothing. You can make it in a week. He publishes this book, and this is the book picked up by.
But just backing up, this is written around 1415.
Yep.
And books lasted a long time.
Yep.
And this book became maybe, 75 years later, became the favorite possession of this Italian guy.
This Italian
What was his name?
captain, boat captain, Christopher Columbus. And
You
he
mean the
takes the
idiot?
book to Ferdinand and Isabella and says, look, this is a cardinal, a man of the church. He said that it's small and it's got to be islands all the way across. Pay me. Put some money in and we'll find out how, if who's right. Well,
Christopher Columbus said that he carried two books with him, the Bible and Pierre Dailly's book, which
Book on
disclaimed
geography.
the small Earth.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty relevant story, and I mean, you guys obviously know nobody in Columbus's time thought the Earth was flat, but Columbus and a handful of people thought it was smaller and that they could make this trip to the New World in much
Right.
less time.
just go
Or make
island
this trip to
hopping.
Asia, yes.
Yeah.
So-
And it was darn lucky there was a continent there that nobody knew about, or he would have starved to death and we would have never have heard of him.
I'm not sure the Native Americans think that was darn lucky.
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
and they didn't fare too well.
Lucky
on
for
that,
Columbus.
So anyway, that's very significant. I figured you guys would find that interesting with your interest on these guys. So Jan Hus dies.
He's a martyr.
Post-war. And the people of Bohemia, Czech lands, Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, parts of Hungary, this region, they treat him as a martyr and they become really
Angry.
Now, one of the things that they get huffy about, which is sometimes these guys fight over the littlest things, was the giving of communion in church.
Right. Because at this moment, the communion was not given in both kinds, or sub
Bread
utra
and
specie,
wine.
the bread and the wine. They only gave the people the bread. The laity got the bread, but the priests got to drink the wine and the bread.
Hey, it's good wine.
Part of the reason why was that they were afraid of spilling the wine. I mean, you had these, peasants, and they would spill the wine. What do? That's the blood of Jesus. You can't have it spilled. Now, I understand in Greek Orthodox churches, if that actually happens, if they spill the wine, now, if people are drinking it, it's boom. Priests get down on the carpet and start sucking it out of the carpet because it is not to be walked on.
But some of this comes back to the whole logic that we got out of Thomas of Aquinas and this whole thinking and this obsession.
It's been transubstantiated once it's been elevated.
But the followers of Hus came to believe that they wouldn't get into heaven if they didn't get both bread
kinds.
and wine at communion.
Right, because you're supposed to get both.
So
they're going to fight over.
Hey, the priests go to heaven, we go to hell. That's not a good deal.
That sucks. So they're going to fight over getting the wine as well as getting the bread, and they will call themselves Hussites, and their symbol is going to become the wine chalice. And this is the leader.
Sorry.
This is the leader of the Hussites, a fellow by the name of Jan Žižka.
And if you notice on his shield there,
on his
what
shield,
I was trying to show you, there's
he's got a wine chalice.
Yes.
And Žižka is going to lead his army of peasants, because what's going to happen is that the Pope is going to call down a crusade against these Hussites. This is the biggest group of heretics that had been happening since the Cathars. So the Hussites, as they're going to be called after Jan Hus, are going to kick out all the priests that they can find and set up their own churches and set up their own structures. So, of course, the Pope has to call down a crusade, just like he would have done on the Seljuk Turks in Jerusalem in the 12th century. And so, yeah, that's why we have our Crusaders flag.
Couldn't they have just gotten their own priest?
Yeah,
why couldn't they just get their own priest to come and bless the wine and have them eat the wine and bread on their own little services?
Hegemony. You want to maintain hegemony. You've just separated a schism. You've got people separating. There's one church, and if I'm the Pope, believe me, I want us to be in charge. And so it was about hegemony, and politics and religion are so intertwined. So yes, let them go off and do their own thing. They actually did after a while because of this guy. Once again, this is.
Do you have any of the fighting?
I will in a second.
Yeah.
Wrong button. Sorry.
I mean, I'm okay to fight over some wine. We've all been there and done that. Trust me. But it just boggles my mind that they're thinking that this is a salvational issue, such that if they're cut off from drinking that somehow it's going to be their doom in the afterlife. Makes no sense to me whatsoever.
They were completely convinced that their salvation depended upon this.
But this comes back to Thomism and the Aristotelian logic. Says this, therefore, A equals B, B equals C. Therefore, if I don't do this, then I'm not saved. This is, again, applying Aristotelian logic to Christian theology, and I'm not sure the two mix that well.
Yeah.
Because you get,
that very reason, there's a lot of problems with Aristotelian logic.
Yeah. Žižka and the Hussites are probably one of the more interesting groups that you're going to run across in Europe.
You got to make a film about them.
We did.
We did. We made a film about them in 1998, and unfortunately, while it is available on Amazon, it's made in 1998.
So it looks crappy.
Yeah, it's a little behind the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find it out there. It's kind of fun, but it's.
But there will be Barrandov Studios in the Czech Republic is making a film on Jan Žižka.
Okay, let me
It's
tell
going to
you
be
about
out within a
why,
year.
why we were so struck with Jan Žižka. He was 65 or 70 when he took over, which in the Middle Ages is ancient. He took over the army. Hus is dead. He basically was this minor
Noble.
nobility. He'd been a friend of the king, and he'd been a thug, helped beat up the enemies of the king.
And he'd been a hunter. He had been a hunting guide. He also was missing an eye.
You can see that in this picture. He's missing an eye there. There's an
He's
eye
got
patch.
an eye
And
patch.
again, this is a picture from the 19th century when, during Czech nationalism, he was revived. But Žižka, well, let's talk about some of his tactics here.
Mhm.
He developed this little device here. This is called a Hussite wagon. It's been compared to a tank, which is not really fair, but you see how it's basically, they've got early handguns here, and they are crouching behind these things, and they would line these things up in a fortification. They called it kolo na kolo, wheel to wheel, and they would string these up and basically build a fortress wherever they wanted one.
It was a portable fortress. Žižka knew the land and the layout. He could get his people there because they were on wagons as more quickly than anybody else. He didn't have a group of knights. Remember, this would have been knights running around fighting these guys. He had peasants because the Czech lands had a very small group of nobles, and the king was gone.
Actually,
and so
you'll see the flail. Are you going to talk about that?
So what do you do with peasants? They aren't experts at using things like the longbow and using swords. So basically, they beat their plowshares into swords, into pikes, into spears. They used farm instruments like this wheat flail. They would the flail that they'd use to beat wheat to separate the wheat from the chaff. They put spikes in it, and they were really good at it. And it was extraordinarily dangerous. You also this was the intersection of knights in shining armor and guns.
Primitive guns. They took
primitive
about 10
guns.
minutes to load, but still.
Yeah, they were single shot. They were kind of
Actually,
like
there's an image
little
right
teeny tiny cannons on a stick. They were literally cannons on a stick. And
one right
you
here.
touched them off and they went kablooey.
We actually built one for our film.
We built one for our film. It's really
It was
fun.
a
It's
lot
a
of
sweet
fun,
sort
and
of thing.
It's somewhere in a closet.
But it's as the historian of technology who we interviewed and talked about, a fellow by the name of Bert Hall, when he talks about the guns, they didn't have a lot of force. Impossible to aim. You shot them from your hip, basically, or lying on the top of the wagon, and aim was terrible. But if you hit something, especially the armor, that bullet would pierce the front plate of the armor, go through what was ever inside the armor, and hit the back plate, but it wouldn't usually have enough power to pierce the back plate, so it would bounce back. So this bullet would sit there and bounce back and forth inside the breastplate and the back plate of these knights in shining armor and just turn them into goo. So it was really a fearsome sort of thing, and you've got to imagine these knights are out on horses, and most of them had never seen guns. The Czech term for the little handguns that they use, whistle, which is in Czech pištole, which is where we get the term pistol.
Yeah. This, unfortunately, you got us on something we're really did a lot of research on. But Jan Žižka, this commander, was basically took over this group, built the city of Tabor and entire fortifications in less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
They were attacked by 3 successive waves, outnumbered probably 10-1, never lost.
Never lost a battle.
And it gets weirder.
It gets weirder. He was besieging a castle called Rabi Castle, and he gets shot with a crossbow bolt in his good eye and survives, and is completely blind for the last 2 years of his career, and still never loses. Yeah. He knows the landscape. His people are trained.
Blind as a bat, never loses a battle, freaked out the Catholic aristocracy because it's like, this guy's a demon, and they called him a demon. They were just horrified at how effective this guy was. And, one of the things that many of these movements we talk about, if we get to the German Peasants' War, they had peasants that were led by Thomas Munzer, and that was about 100 years later. But the German princes came down and just slaughtered them. But Žižka managed to motivate these people, organize them, and it's just an incredible story.
It's an amazing story, and there's statues to Žižka all over the Czech Republic.
You can watch our film. It's called Blind Courage, The Unique Genius of Jan Žižka. But again, it was made in 1998, and so it's better than that now.
Yeah, it's pretty. But the Hussites manage to scare the Catholic Church enough that the Catholic Church will leave them alone. For the next 200 years, there's this little pocket of Hussites right in the middle of Europe.
You look at a map even of the Holy Roman Empire and everything, and they were there, and they had their own religion. The Hussite religion kind of faded, and then it was revitalized in the early 20th century. So there are Hussite churches today in Prague. Yeah.
And you can tell because they've got a wine chalice in front.
So they were so badass that they were left alone by the church and got to drink all the wine they wanted. That's my kind of religion.
You betcha.
I could deal with that.
Now, the church accused them of not just being weirdos. It's kind of why the term bohemian means a very unusual person or someone who goes against the grain. It's because of the Hussites. But one of the things that they were accused of being was Adamites. Tell them about the Adamites.
Okay, I'm going to put a little context here, which is that whenever you get a religious group splitting off, one of the things that I've noticed consistently is you get another group splitting off from the split-offs. And the split-offs, it's like, we're breaking from the church because we want to drink wine with our communion. Oh, yeah, we're with you. But we also want to run around naked?
Run around naked and have sex.
Well, there was a group that said, hey,
this church is getting better and better.
We're going to heaven. We can do whatever we want. They were called the Adamites or the Neo-Adamites. There was technically a group of Adamites in the early church. Okay. They called themselves the Neo-Adamites, and they believed they were incapable of sin because they were saved.
They were saved.
So do whatever you want.
They were the ultimate YOLO group.
This is an image of a pamphlet that was put out on them. This is actually a group later that logged in, but you can see this is a new sect of religion decried called the Adamites, deriving their religion from our father Adam, wherein they hold themselves to be blameless at the last day. They'll never, and you can notice there, I don't know if your resolution's good enough, you can see he's poking a stick at the man's junk. The guy's really well hung, too. Stop! Kyle's not here. Somebody's got to make the gay jokes.
That's what I brought Lawrence in for. Da-da-da.
Oh, sorry. I'll start making gay jokes.
Pay attention to the penises, Lawrence. So wait a minute. I got a question. So if these people were like without sin and they, were able to do whatever they wanted, dance naked, sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever, then they didn't need any church or they didn't need the Roman Catholic Church at all. Wouldn't that seem to be something the Roman
That's one
Church
of the,
go, hey.
Right. So with the Adamites, Jan Žižka took a particularly unusual stance.
Kill them all.
Every one of them.
Every single one of them.
To pieces.
Yeah. So the Hussites were responsible for killing off a whole bunch of the Adamites.
And
so it's heretics killing heretics.
There have been groups that tried to revive. Yeah. But basically, and we see that throughout time. Anytime there's a reform movement, there's other people that want to keep going.
Right.
But
somebody up. It's all fun and games until someone gets an eye poked out.
Or in the case of Žižka, two.
Anyway.
But anyway, so the Hussites are basically taking over this entire region of Central Europe. They're running themselves, and they are independent of the Catholic Church, and there's a number of movements to try to break them up, including one led by this lady right here. You guys recognize her? No?
Nope.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark.
Joan of Arc.
Say Joan of Arc.
Yep. Okay, shot in dark. Yes, that's Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc, after she had successfully conquered the Burgundians and taken and put her king back on France, she said, I'm now going to go to Bohemia, and I'm going to defeat the Hussites and bring them back to the Catholic fold. Something got in the way of her plans. What exactly was that?
Trial and execution.
Okay.
Wasn't she
That puts a
schizophrenic
damper
or something like that? Wasn't she like hear voices?
That's a big question, and since we're talking about doing our own show a little later, we wanted to actually examine, what all was going on,
with Joan of Arc. She's fascinating individual.
Because she led, she was 14 and she led the armies of France, and some of it is like, oh, she's so perfect. How can a 14-year-old girl have anything but the purest thoughts? I've known 14-year-old girls.
Yeah. No.
I've never been a 14-year-old girl. I was a 14-year-old boy once. I do recall that, but the ones I liked. At 14, I was looking at Playboy Playmates. I was like in that 18 to 30 category. I thought was great. So
Joan was definitely used by powers and manipulated.
Right. She was a symbolic leader, but she was also a leader. I mean, she maybe didn't make all of the decisions a general in the field would do, but she was out in the field wearing the armor and telling the guys where to put the cannons. She was certainly charismatic. She certainly got them motivated. And you can see this is an image of her from around the time leading a siege of a castle. And there's a much more recent romantic version of her.
Now, did they think she was divinely inspired or led? Did they think there was a divine providence with her of some kind, or that God was speaking to her, or that she was having angelic visions of some kind? Did people actually believe that she was not just of normal origin?
Okay. People still do. She's a saint. Yeah. She had visions, and God spoke to her, and God told her, I want this guy in charge of France, not this guy.
She, when you go to the little town of Rouen in France, the town of Rouen, where she was burned, and they've got right outside the train station, they've got the city, the main city square, and they've got the little plaque where she was burned. Traditionally, there's always fresh flowers on it.
I actually saw a little man putting them out there one morning. Yeah. So but Joan, of course, as you know, was done in for heresy, and I don't know. Are you up on the details of that? Because it's kind of a strange story.
I'm really not.
Okay.
Not me. No.
Well, so Joan of Arc led the French to victory. Charles was put back on the throne, and they got into negotiations, and she was doing well. I don't know how she
was captured by some Frenchmen who were pro-English. They were still supporting the other king that they wanted on the throne. Okay. And so
but she's popular. How do you get rid of this lady? She's so popular. The guys will follow her anywhere. She's all of 18 or 19 now.
So they arrest her, they imprison her, and they take away all of her clothes.
Well, let me back up. They want to charge her with heresy because heresy is very convenient. Sure. You can do this. Okay, what has she done? Well, she led the army. Well, God told her to. How do you know it was God? Well, God told her to. Yeah. Well, what has she done? She wore armor. She wore men's clothing, and the Bible says you cannot wear men's clothing. The Bible basically says that for a man to dress as a woman or a woman to dress as a man is an abomination, the usual stuff. So she was captured. She was put in prison. Mm-hmm. And this is where the story gets kind of curious. She said, I promise I will never wear men's clothing again. I am reformed. She was very, very deeply religious. I will never, ever do this again.
Yep. But they had taken away all of her clothes.
There's actually two versions of the story. Yeah. One says that she had no clothes, but there were a man's clothes there. Another says that she was in prison and she was afraid of being raped. Mm-hmm. And women's dresses had no down there, so she put on pants to protect herself. In either case, she was caught, clearly set up, but she was caught wearing pants again. Yep. And that made her a lapsed heretic. You had your chance. Yep. We gave you a chance to reform. What did you do? Yep. You wore pants again. And that's when they toasted her.
Back in the early 1970s, Dick Cavity was a talk show host. One time asked a British actress by the name of Hermione Gringold. Yeah. Why did the British burn Joan of Arc? And she said, because we were cold.
Obviously, Joan of Arc.
This was years later. I mean, How old was she at the time? She was like 19 or something at that time, wasn't she?
19 when she was burned. Yes, she was 19. Okay. Within 30 years, she was rehabilitated, and she was canonized in the 20th century. But she was rehabilitated and started being elevated very quickly. That, but it was politics. Basically, her side lost. She was out. Burn her. The other side wins. Back and forth. The 100 Years' War went on for
100 years. Yeah, 107 years.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to keep moving along. I was going to talk real briefly about another heretic, but I don't want to spend too much time. This is, but I can't remember his first name. This is Mr. Savonarola.
Girolamo.
I can never say Girolamo Savonarola. Puritanical, opposed the church, called for enforced poverty. Basically, he was in Florence. And the Medicis were ruling Florence, and the Medicis were rich.
Everyone was rich. Everyone was having a great old time. And here comes Killjoy Savonarola saying, we need to burn all of our, beautiful things because we need to simplify our lives. He called it the bonfire of the vanities.
He also wanted to give money to the poor, felt this was important, rather than enriching yourselves. And this is at the height of Medici Florence. This is when they're building the amazing palaces. They're doing all of this stuff. Savonarola takes over, basically is elected mayor, and has a campaign which translates to pretty close to make Florence great again.
Yep.
It really was.
Yeah. And if you remember Tipper Gore going out and burning rock and roll albums and all this sort of stuff, yeah, you're getting the idea.
But Savonarola was a nationalist, and this is something that keeps coming up, as I said. We've got communism, as we had it back with the Peasants' Revolt. We've got nationalism. He's basically saying Florence shouldn't be beholden to the king, shouldn't be beholden to the Medicis, should be an independent, democratic republic.
It was a republic at the time, anyway. Under
the Medicis?
Anyway.
All right. Anyway, and well, he sort of got the usual deal. You guys are getting tired of us just toasting.
No, but I am serious though. I really wish I would have had this discussion with you all and listened to this prior to watching Da Vinci's Demons, because it was all talking about Florence and what was it? What's the name of the family?
You can see in the image the Uffizi Palace still there. That's where that's the great art gallery, and that
it was this huge political thing. Is all the power structures and all this political plays between factions and groups. And as somebody who doesn't study the history, and it is a little overwhelming. But I think that if I would have been a little more familiarized with the politics at the time, it probably would have made a lot more sense of the series. But no, I can listen to this for hours. Honestly, I know we are coming up to the 90-minute mark. People can ask some questions in the live chat, and we got some super chats. So we probably might have to wrap it up. But of course, we can always have a part three. How do you part tray would be in French, right? Part tray.
Well,
I want to keep going for a little while because right after this we get into a real game changer. Did you have something else to say?
Yeah, well, that's
in French, right?
Okay, we keep talking about the failed heretics, or the heretics that keep getting burned at the stake. There's one guy who doesn't. Surprisingly,
the heretic that lives.
Yeah, this guy,
Martin Luther.
Oh yeah,
Martin Luther. And it's a question of when he comes along, and who's in power when he comes along, and the technology that's available when he comes along. It's the printing press that's going to make all the difference.
I can challenge that. I think there were other factors, but
printing press.
Okay, and this is actually I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and talk about something slightly off topic, which is that Misha and I, Dr. Griffith and I, are talking about starting our own, maybe weekly, maybe a little less show, where we look at some of the controversies in history, some places where historians don't agree.
Right.
Because while we agree, Martin Luther lived in the 15th and 16th century, he started this revolution, we don't necessarily agree with why did he succeed.
Yep.
And that's kind of like a fun thing to explore. So we're talking about doing a show on that, and we hope you'll tune in and join us.
That'd be outstanding, especially because I would think that the printing press was a huge factor in all this. But you're saying that you don't think that was the primary factor?
I don't think that primary is a tough one. I think one of the biggest differences was that Luther, well, it comes down to, let's show you another image here. It comes down to this guy. Nope. Sorry, I'm out of order. Just come back here. I'll find my picture.
Frederick the Wise.
No.
No.
This
Carlos
guy.
Quinte.
Yes. This guy right here. Carlos V. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong picture. This guy, Charles V. Charles V was the Holy Roman Emperor. He was from Spain. He is still kind of revered, very complex character.
Yeah.
And this, by the way, is a chocolate bar which is available in much of Latin America because he's still kind of held up. And that's why it's that. You see it's made by Nestle today. It was a separate company.
He is the only Holy Roman Emperor that has a candy bar named after him.
What
That's
about...
significant. Yeah, that's impressive.
There was no Emperor Hershey?
No, there was no Emperor Kit Kat.
That's funny. All right, Emperor Kit Kat. Anyway, so I believe my own contention is that Martin Luther survived because he aligned himself with a number of German princes and noblemen and got
Strong
really
guys.
powerful connection. Charles V was busy fighting his own war with the Pope at this time. Charles V kidnapped the Pope. Burned down Rome. It was a really ugly time.
The Holy Roman Emperor opposed the Pope at this moment.
Charles V was also, this is 1530s approximately.
1520s.
1520s. Charles V is the head of Spain. He's the Holy Roman Empire, but he's based in Spain. Spain has got a lot of money coming in from someplace.
Yes. This is when the riches of the New World are coming in. 1520, the silver mines in Bolivia are starting to churn out that silver.
So there was a lot of factors going on, and Charles V just didn't have time to lobby everything. He wanted to be a thorn in the side of the Pope. And Charles V and I do have this image, at this meeting.
The Diet of Worms.
The Diet of Worms.
No,
boy, you want to lose weight, try a Diet of
of
Worms.
No.
Am I the first one to make that joke?
No, I make it every semester. It's a Diet is an assembly of German lords and noblemen, and it was done in the city of Worms. So it looks, when you write it down, it looks like the Diet of Worms. My students love it.
This, by the way, is a picture of Charles there. Charles actually never met Luther. He stayed in a separate room during the Diet because he could not be seen in the presence of a heretic. But he was like in a separate room in the same palace.
Right. Well, Luther had become a thorn in the side of Carlos Quinte because he had been nailing his 95 Theses to the wall of the church. He's been offering to disputate it publicly. That whole public disputation of Theses is coming up. And he... when he nailed his original theses up, it was in Latin. Who cared? Very few people could read it. What happens within days is that someone grabs that list of 95 theses, the list of 95 complaints that he has against the Pope and against the Church, translates it into German, prints 250,000 copies of this, and spreads it throughout the German-speaking lands.
That's a pretty strong case, by the way.
Yeah, 250,000 copies. I mean, that's a huge number. And so everyone has in their hand, or can have someone read to them, exactly what Hus is saying.
Luther.
And in Luther, sorry. And in a world where before newspapers, before any media, everything was rumor. But when you standardize it by printing it, it ain't rumor anymore. It's something completely different. And I think this was the strength of what Luther was saying and what he was doing.
Okay. My own contention, though, is that the politics at the time were such that it was a different time. You know, Luther survived, died of natural causes.
Right.
Most of the other guys before were burned.
Right.
And one of the things is that, you know, these movements were crushed.
Yeah.
Right and left, they were crushed. Now, the Protestant Reformation, if you can call it a Reformation.
I hate calling it the Reformation. I call it the Protestant Revolution.
It was big.
It was huge.
It was big. It went on for years. It got very involved. Part of it involved this man. This is Thomas Munzer. Thomas Munzer was a follower of Luther originally. You can see there's a picture of him hacking somebody's head off behind him. Munzer was another communist.
Yes. He starts up a commune, and
Another picture of Munzer. But here's a curious picture of Thomas Munzer that I find fascinating, especially if you realize what that is. Takes a second. Want to figure it out?
A German mark.
Be more specific.
$5.
It is an East German mark. That is from back when there was an East German mark. You see, there is Deutschen Democratic Republic, DDR. This is from East Germany.
1975. There's the communist symbol.
There. And so they held him up as an example because Munzer said, no more private property. Hey, we're going to get rid of the church. Luther was getting rid of the church establishment and the church hierarchy. Munzer said, that's great. Let's get rid of these nobles too. Yep. Let's have everybody equal. Everybody can have everything. We can have this new life. We can really build a brave new world where everybody has a chance.
Yep.
Why not? You're getting rid of the church. Why not get rid of the kings too?
Yep.
And what exactly happened to them?
They got killed.
The German Peasants' War
this heresy stuff doesn't end well for most people, does it?
No, it usually doesn't. Really that's kind of what's surprising about Luther is that he, got married, had kids, wrote some songs, liked beer,
right?
Got drunk. The German Peasants' War was one of the biggest such conflicts ever. Estimates, and again, when you get into numbers from these times, people go up 1, 2, 3, 30, 60. I'm late. Oh, there's a spear coming at me. But they believe about 100,000 people were killed. And basically, part of what happened is Luther said, yes, church overthrow, absolutely. Princes, they protected me.
Yeah. So keep the status quo of the power, but get rid of the church hierarchy.
One of the curious things, and this is a fun story, which is slightly off topic, is Luther was returning from the Diet of Worms, expecting to be killed at any moment, and he was kidnapped. Actually, he had staged the whole thing. It was like something out of a bad movie. He staged the whole thing, was kidnapped,
his own kidnapping.
went off in disguise, hid in a castle. But these German princes had arranged this kidnapping and spirited him away, and he was able to build, and that's when he did much of his writing, and the movement grew. That's part of why, they got there. So Luther was like, no, we're not going to overthrow the princes. We're going to do them, and in fact, you peasants out there revolting, you really should reform. Are you going to reform? You're going to come back and obey your lords? No?
Nope.
Kill them.
Kill them all. Kill them all.
Mr. Luther had his nice moments, but he also was a big fan of violence at some points. This is, let's see if I can get a nice clean image of this. This is a panorama of the German Peasants' War. This is housed in a large amphitheater, and it's like 150 feet around. It's a circular picture, and this is a print of it. I just love it. I'm not sure if the resolution is coming through here, but this is just a great work of art. And one of the other things about heresies is it sometimes does give us great works of art. Anyway, so but the German Peasants' War, maybe 100,000 people died, blood, gore, the usual stuff. Munzer's crushed. And I'm going to skip forward in a second here. Actually, hang on here. Anyway, sorry, I love this stuff. Okay. And we're back. Okay. Okay. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because we are hurting for time. Let's skip the Munster Rebellion. More burning. Munster Rebellion happened in Munster, Germany. There was another group of people called Anabaptists, and they basically said, again, Catholic Church dogma says you've got to be baptized to get into heaven. So we're going to baptize you as little kids. Take care of it. You're insured. You lived a good life. You helped everybody. You had a good relationship with the church. You were never baptized. You're going to hell.
Yep. This is the Catholic idea of baptism. Infant baptism gets to the point at which they devise syringes for holy water so that they can shove them up the vaginas of women who are going to have stillbirths or babies that are about to die, so that they can baptize them in the womb.
Once again, we're applying logic and metaphysics together. They don't mix very well.
Yeah.
So the Anabaptists were a group. told you we'd get gross.
You did. It's a little disturbing. You gotta ask. At some point, when if somebody ever stopped to think, if this is how God designed this system to work, God has some pretty fucked up plans. I mean, I cannot ever believe in a deity that designed things to be so stupid like that. Yes, we have hindsight, right? So we didn't live during those ages, but still, we do have people even to this day that do think just along those kind of lines, and it's disturbing to me in a lot of different ways that people think that somehow makes any bit of sense whatsoever.
It's called intelligent design, Steve.
Yes, actually, what I was going to say, one of the reasons I wanted to do this show for you, Steve,
Clearly
is because
intelligent.
it's the same kind of logic that you believe something, you're not going to be changed, so you apply logic to it and you get some weird places. So Anabaptists were a group that basically said that doesn't count. Anabaptist means rebaptized.
They believe basically in only adult baptism, not baptism of infants.
The Munster Revolt was a group of people took over the town of Munster, and they said, well, now that we're rebaptized, hey, I've heard this one before, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Communism, group marriage,
Yep.
lots of fun. And, well, it didn't end out too well for them.
I see. Adamites Part 2.
Yeah, really it was.
It didn't end well for them either.
No, but here's, this is what happened to the bulk of them. This is in the town of Munster, but this is the church of Saint-Lambert in Munster today. And I love this image. Do you use this in your class?
No, I stopped using it because they would kind of go, ew.
That's where they put the leaders of the Munster Revolt.
In cages.
In cages.
Hanging.
This is on the edge of the church. So this is the church.
Far up on the steeple.
Those are out there. You go to Munster today, this is a modern picture, and they're still there. And obviously, they put people in there, and they left them there
They just left them there.
70 years.
They did
that
a
time they were
similar
back,
thing to William Kidd too.
Yeah.
Oh, the pirate?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I've heard that.
Well, privateer technically, but whatever.
Yes.
Okay, so we are getting to something of a wrap up because the Catholic Church does eventually say,
We're not going to take this Protestant Revolution thing lying down.
and maybe they had a point about the simony, about the concubinage, about the buying of bishoprics, about bishopric always sounds dirty.
Yeah, I know that does sound dirty. So what do? You call a meeting and throw them out. No, you have another council. And this is the Council of Trent. This is probably the most important of the councils that they're going to have
In history.
because what they're going to do is turn the Catholic Church away from worldly ideas and try to recreate it into a more intelligent form.
Well, basically, they still held certain dogmas. So the Council of Trent, which lasted really from 1545 to 1573, a lot of different sessions, they kept coming back, but they settled on what dogma we're going to accept and what dogma we're not. Very, very clearly, these are the positions we're holding, and this formulated the Catholic Church really in many ways until Vatican II.
Right.
Mass will be in Latin, not in
Right.
German, not in the vernacular.
Mhm.
These will be the
Priests must be celibate,
Yes, these are
but
the
it also holds the church as infallible.
Anyway, so these are the
Right.
conditions of priests. These are the
But
conditions.
Pope is infallible. Sorry.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So this laid the groundwork, but it had a strange effect, which is that it kind of slowed down the scientific renaissance in Italy and even in parts of France.
Right.
Because it led to stuff. But around this time, I'm going to get into a weird one. The church discovered, and part of the reform, somebody said, it's been awfully warm at Easter.
Yeah, way too warm at Easter, and we can't make the calendar line up.
Easter, in case you don't know, is typically the first Sunday after the first full moon following the vernal equinox. The vernal equinox normally comes on March 21st. Everybody knows the vernal equinox comes on March 21st.
Yes.
Julius Caesar said the vernal equinox comes on March 21st.
Right.
Okay. But it's awfully warm.
Yeah,
It feels like summer.
In the intervening 1,000 years, things started shifting. Even with Julius Caesar giving us leap year, because he based the mathematicians at the time based the leap year on the idea that the sun revolves 24¼ hours every day.
Actually, he felt the Earth went around the sun every 24 hours.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, no, a quarter of a day. They add a quarter of a day every time the Earth goes around the sun.
A lot of details, but the short of it is the church determined to fix the calendar. And the job was started by a gentleman named Nicholas of Cusa, and he decided to contact his friend and say, this math isn't working. What's wrong with the calendar? What can we do? And they went out and they talked to this guy right here. And this guy said, I think we got some problems. I think we got some big problems with all the math. The numbers aren't working. Maybe we need to look at the entire situation differently. Maybe the sun doesn't even go around the Earth. So what happens is, as you probably know, the position during Copernicus wrote the book when he was a relatively young man. He was afraid to publish it because it was so heretical. Yeah,
it was published posthumously.
Actually, he allowed it to be published like right before he died.
I don't know if he
knew he was dying, but anyway, the church initially liked it, but the Council of Trent got involved and said, this isn't the way we think, because the Bible says that the sun stood still when Joshua held up his arms, therefore the sun moves.
The sun's the one that moved, yeah.
But part of what I'm saying is the church started by getting this priest, involved in this math, and well, that's what happened.
That's Copernicus. That's the start of the idea of the heliocentric universe.
Okay, so Copernicus does this, and we've got this heresy going around, and this idea. And in 1600, we have this gentleman right here. This is a guy who is a terrible picture. One of your commenters already said, how come all the artists were so bad in those days? This is, of course, Giordano Bruno. You guys have heard of Giordano Bruno, I suspect. Neil Tyson talked about him in Cosmos.
Yeah, we've got Jim Majors is in the chat saying his student Bruno was burned at the stake. Way to go, Jim.
Yes, we were just getting to Giordano Bruno. Now, Giordano Bruno
theme here. Everybody dies at the stake. It's like the current theme for all this.
From a church.
Yeah.
But Giordano Bruno preached a number of things that didn't quite fit with church teaching. He believed in people on other planets, which even knowing what a planet was. He denied the divinity of Jesus. He denied a whole range of other things. And the records of his trial are not extant. So we don't know exactly what he did. We do know that he was an ungodly, stubborn man. That he was told, Giordano, baby, just mellow out, chill, just don't take these positions. And he said, no, I will hold these positions. And even on the day of his death, he basically held his ground. Giordano Bruno's trial was largely led by a man named Robert Bellarmino, who is now a saint. But Robert Bellarmino later went to a friend of his named Galileo and said, you know what we did to Bruno? You might want to lay low for a while. So
yeah,
I was going to say
now I do remember this episode on Cosmos now, by the way. I do remember them talking about this particular person. Yeah.
It's a little dangerous to hold up Bruno as a hero of science because he appears to have just made stuff up. But it's still, these positions were held. He refused to back down. Galileo did back down. But part of why I wanted to end with Bruno is because we've kind of gone this full circle from logic, mixing Aristotelian logic with faith and coming up with these positions that are held and that are wrestled with. And eventually the church brings in logic and science and analyzes stuff and has to battle with it again. And science is starting to win out of this. And of course, as I'm sure you know, John Paul has said, sorry about that, Galileo.
Yep.
They haven't said that about Bruno, by the way, partly because Bruno had a bunch of other weird beliefs.
Yeah. So in essence, these ideas of heresy, they've tried to keep them going after Luther, but they just wouldn't take. And it's in 1600 we start into the scientific revolution and the spread of logic And we get to the Age of Enlightenment, and all of a sudden, the idea that people can worship as their conscience desires becomes an important point.
And there are heretics today, of course. There are, the Mormon Church who threw out a whole batch that didn't accept certain teachings.
Yep.
The Anabaptists are still around. They're called Mennonites. There are movement, although I don't think they run around naked anymore.
No.
Well,
So
kind of every church is a heresy to some other church in some ways, is it not?
Exactly. That's kind of what we were saying, is that once you start branching, how do you stop? I've heard that there are like 100 versions of Baptists that are just very minor distinctions.
Well, when you build your idea on every man is his own priest, you've got to think, oh, I didn't want to open that floodgate, did I? Oops, sorry. When everyone
They don't plan ahead,
can
do
do
they?
their own interpretation of Scripture, then they're going to interpret Scripture.
And the
they
interesting thing is Marcionism is seeing a resurgence, which I'm very excited about.
I don't know what that is. Marcionism?
It was a 2nd century
Prophet Marcion.
heresy, and they believed that there were 2 gods. I made a video about this just called Marcion of Sign Up. So there was the evil god of the Jews, and then there was the good God of Jesus. And basically Marcion just took out everything Jewish from, he only used the Gospel of Luke, and he took out everything Jewish from it, including the genealogy, and he had an allegiance to Paul. So he had like a bunch of Paul's letters, including one that we no longer have. I think it's the letter to the Laodiceans, but it's fascinating. Marcion was awesome. Obviously, he was excommunicated, but when he was excommunicated, he just, like in Asia Minor, he just ruffle stomped the entire place. I mean, his ideology was just so popular. And then after
Did he allow
his
for
death,
drinking lots of wine?
I have no idea.
Well,
I'm only into the whole wine and nudity. That's the only thing I'm really interested in.
Well, the Cathars also had their dual god, and even Manichaeans, and all the different versions of Manichaean. We were corrected on that. All of the different versions of Manichaean often involve a good god and a bad god and the struggle between them. And we did cover some of that in part 1, but Marcions I hadn't heard of.
Sounds like a yin
So I
yang
have to look
kind of
at it.
thing.
Look at it. Can I play a short
Marcion's
video?
awesome. What?
Can I play you guys a short video? Thanks. This is our video.
I do not hear anything.
Yeah, we won't be able to hear this,
Oh, really?
unfortunately, I don't think. Yeah. But the graphics we can see.
Try it again.
I'm Jerry Griffith, a
There you
documentary filmmaker specializing in historical topics. And I'm Dr. Misha Griffith, a professor of history at a local community college. We're here to tell you about our new live YouTube series, History Unsettled. Sometimes history is neat and tight. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon in 49 BCE. John Wilkes Booth shot Abraham Lincoln in the theater. Oh, that must have hurt. And Catherine the Great died on the toilet. She didn't die on the toilet. She had a stroke on the toilet and died in bed. All right. While historians often agree on facts, they usually disagree on interpretation. And that is the basis of History Unsettled. In each episode, we explore some of these issues and look at where historical experts disagree. Examples include Aristotle, woke or broke? Was he an avatar of science and philosophy or a big-headed sexist? John Brown and William Lloyd Garrison, 2 Americans who devoted their lives to ending slavery. One called for nonviolent protests, the other, murder. Who was right? Joan of Arc, feminist icon, transgender martyr, or religious nut job? Was the domino theory of the Cold War a legitimate concern, paranoia, or a money-making scheme by defense contractors? How about this one? Robert E. Lee, traitor or coward? Ooh, that one might be a little too controversial. Well, we'll have lots of controversy, but at least we will always agree. No, we won't. Oh, yes, we will. No, we won't. Yes, we will. History Unsettled will be broadcast live on YouTube, so you're welcome to join the conversation. Don't miss the premiere episode of History Unsettled,
Wednesday, December 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Smash that red subscribe button now so you won't miss a single episode.
See you there.
You always had to get the last one in.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Do not.
You do too.
Take the last word. Go ahead.
No.
She had her chance.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I can't wait for
Yes,
that.
Project we're gonna-
I'm putting the link in the live chat right there for that. So go smash that subscribe button.
All right. Let's
That's
see if anybody
awesome.
likes it. It's going to be trying Wednesdays at 7 so that we won't be stepping on any of your turf. You know, people can switch from us to you, you know. If that
And
works.
Dr. Griffith looks badass in that photo, by the way. I love that. She looks like she's ready to kick ass. I think she's got this it's not a leather cap. Is that a leather cap or it kind of looks leatherish? But
Yeah.
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 You look-
I was
you look
probably
totally
waiting for Barry
badass.
to go get
I love
batteries.
That's great. That's going to be fun. I can't wait for that. That's the
Good.
26th. We've helped
Right.
birth another channel in some ways. I feel like a midwife.
Yep. You've birthed another
that's gonna be
channel.
awesome.
Oh, we're already getting negative comments about my Robert E. Lee crack. Okay, good.
Yep, good.
I'm not a fan
Well,
of Robert.
I'm telling you right now, that might be one of your more controversial things when it comes to Robert E. Lee.
We live
Yeah.
in the South, but I'm not a fan. I'll
We
admit that.
live in Manassas, for goodness sake.
And we live in very northern Virginia. Yes.
Wow. Well, we are running out of time. We do keep these things under 2 hours, usually 90 minutes, 2 hours, because we do like to upload them in one shot to the podcast. If we found out if it goes over 2 hours, it's normally too large to upload as one thing. So this was so good that it's definitely going to be podcast material. So I did want to thank you two for coming back and giving us part 2 on this. People love you
Do we have any
guys. People can sit here. We didn't have any questions. We had a couple super chats, but I did ask the live chat if they had any questions, and nothing came up. But I will read the super chats real quick, and if anybody wants to ask a question that way while I'm reading them, we can. But Andrew B says for $2, great episode. See, they love you guys. And then God's Servant again for $5 says, God is real. His name is Jesus. Be baptized in Jesus' name. Acts 2:38. So
How many times?
Amen.
yeah, I don't know, submersion or sprinkle. I was baptized Mormon, but I was submerged. But I don't get the whole submersion versus sprinkle, baptism versus adult. I can't imagine a deity that puts forth a plan where an infant has to be baptized. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
And God who can
None.
create the universe can figure a way around this rule.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think that somebody if it's contingent upon being sprinkled with a bunch of water, somebody's blessed, is going to be something to somebody's eternal salvation. That's a pretty shitty plan. I'm sorry. I'm getting a lot more outspoken than I have
do you
been
wanna
on
know
some of the
where
stuff because
We have a question. Where did we go to college?
Well, I got my undergraduate degree at San Francisco State University, and I got my master's degree at University of California, Davis.
And I got my master's at California State University, Chico, and I got my doctorate at George Mason University.
And don't forget your undergraduate at the University of Washington.
University of Washington.
We're West Coast people. We're out here now, but that's where we're from.
Question. Did Luther just
Yeah.
rip off his whole act from Jan Hus? Well, the Czechs think so.
That comment was made. Luther was asked about it, and he said no. But yes,
They
I actually
Luther knew
have a
about
question.
Jan
if-
Hus.
sure.
All right.
ahead.
So the Hussites, were they in any way related to, at least tangentially, to the winged hussars? They were like this Commonwealth army.
no.
No, they weren't related. Okay.
Huss is it's a Czech word. Hussar, I believe, comes from the German. Huss is the Czech word for goose. Jan Hus. They didn't have last names the way we think of them today. Jan Hus grew up in the village of Husinec, which means goose town. And when he moved to Prague, the big city, he became known as Jan from Goose Town or just Jan Hus. They were shortened and a lot of names like that. They didn't have family names the way we think of them, at least not in that culture. A lot of them are just
or just based on their job. Watt Tyler was a Tyler.
put tiles on
um,
roofs.
Right. If you look at all these English names, Miller, I used to think of them very quickly on the time. Anyway,
Baker,
Wheeler, yeah,
Turner,
Turner, yeah.
Theresa May,
No,
but she may not.
may not. No.
Different subject. Sorry.
YouTube Surgeon General says, "Can you ask them to come back many more times?" Thank you. Oh yes. I think going into next year, we're probably gonna have people like at least once a month come back. You know, certain guests that
Like that.
you know, just gonna be staples. Obviously, you two are definitely staples in this community. People can sit and listen to you talk about these things for hours upon hours and hours, and you know, and it's funny is every tangent you go down still seems to lead back to the main topic at hand, and I love that approach that you have, that everything kind of blends into each other and there isn't this wildly different narrative and wildly different path. It's like everything you guys talk about has harmony to each other, and it's just a beautiful synergy you both have when you guys talk about these things, and I love it. Question: Iron Chariter says, ask Jerry and Misha, did the Dutch in the South Africa use the same wagon technique that the Hussites used against the Zulus, lining up the wagon wheels to wheel in a circle?
It's
Boer
this
War.
Boer War. I don't know about the South Africans, but it's exactly what the Conestoga wagons were doing when the Indians would attack the settlers.
Yeah, but they had
coming out
canvas tops. The Hussite
Yeah.
wagons were designed for the Boer War. Unfortunately, were busted. I
Yeah,
don't know that
don't
much
know.
about it.
That would be
well, you know,
I
fascinating
will
to
look it
find
up
out.
as soon as we're done.
But the idea about the wagons was it got your gunmen and your guys with the pikes and everything up to the level of the horsemen, so the horsemen are not running you down. Also, the knights are basically fighting with lances. They wouldn't pull out the sword. Generally speaking, they would have their lance and try to run everything through, because the whole point of a knight on a horse with all the armor was to get all of that inertia going and down to that point at the front of that lance, and that will go right through somebody. But with these wagons, aiming up at the wagons was difficult with the lance, and also the wagons had extra wooden plating, huge, thick oak planks around them on the front, so that those lances would go in, splinter into the wood, and stick. And those things are heavy. We have at the museum in Tabor, they have a mock-up of these wagons, and we
got in trouble for tearing it
we
apart.
we got in trouble for taking parts of it off so that we could look underneath the parts, and the curator come and said, please do not handle our wagon. But yeah, they were thick oak pieces.
Yeah, maybe we should redo that film with modern techniques. And again, it's out there. I think you can get it at a $5 discount rack on Amazon. But you know, it was a very interesting experience learning about this blind as a bat general and lose.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's really amazing.
How come they didn't reinforce any of that wood with any kind of like metal or anything in the front or anything like plates or something? Why was it just wood? Or did they
They were
reinforce
good
it?
metal workers.
This is also 600 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a modern, I think that's Agnes McBride, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. Agnes McBride. This is a modern guy trying to theorize how they were built. We have, and I could find that eventually, we do have period drawings of them.
Right.
But as wrong button. As one of your commentators said, much of the art back then wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were based on hearsay. We do have some drawings, but you don't have that kind of detail there. Right?
And the perspective is all weird, because you're seeing the wheels are all splayed and everything, and it's like, it looks like it's broken, but they're trying to show it without understanding how to get things in nice perspective. The Czechs were good iron workers. There were certain things about their country that made ironworking something that they did quite a bit of. They had a lot of iron and a lot of coal, so that they were very good at iron. They were very good at silver, working silver. But they didn't grow crops that much. They didn't have very good cropland. So they had fish farms. So back they have the oldest ones, I think, go back to the 9th century, but they've had fish farms
since that time.
All right.
Okay. People are asking about your channel. I did put the link in the video description and in the live chat. They're like, "There's no
Thank
videos
you.
on there." The premiere on the 26th. That was the whole thing that they were talking about. They
That was the
they go
tease,
live
yes.
on the 26th. That was the teaser that they had. By the way, who did your chess graphic? Did you guys make that graphic? That CGI?
Yeah, we do. And again,
Nice.
this is
Very
this
impressive.
is that's the cover of our old video. A blind man built an army of peasants, armed them with farm tools, and did the impossible. Anyway, it was. But
Yep, we're in the black.
anyway, so yeah, the graphic stuff like that, we
It's
kind of what we do.
Yeah.
Although I'm not. It was a new program. Anyway,
it was a new program, and I was
fantastic.
just learning it. It was the original version of 3D Studio Max.
Oh, you're talking about during the Blind
Yeah.
Courage film.
Yeah,
gotcha.
it's what Sly Sparkane uses.
I think
When
they were talking
is
about
it
the chess
Sly?
graphic in the teaser.
The chess on graphic on
What'd
the
you
teaser. Yeah, I use Hit Film and Blender for most of my CGI.
Well, this is Cinema 4D Lite, but anyway,
But anyways, we are going to wrap this up, and we are going a little bit over time. I want to again thank you both
Yeah.
for coming on for the second time on this, and we'll definitely schedule for the third time. You want to go ahead and leave them with anything that you will give us, maybe a teaser for the next time, and then I'll have Lawrence promote his channel, and then we'll call it a night
debating.
tonight.
She wants to do a show on revolutions for you guys.
Right.
I want to do a show, and I think this might fit well with what Lawrence does, which is on the history of atheism, because it's kind of a curious backstory in some of the medieval crushing of it and the attitudes and the there's debate among historians over whether it really existed in the Middle Ages, but there's comments, even the Bible talks about, the fool has said in his heart there is no God. So I'm
I have
curious.
there had
a
to be
book that I
someone.
downloaded. I have a book that I downloaded, a PDF on the history of atheism, and I swear to you, it's like that thick. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of history going back thousands of years on a particular topic, and I don't really get into the
Definitely
history so
send us-
much of it, but I would be
Definitely, you
interested to
can
listen
send us
to.
the link.
Part of the
I'll
fun
send
of
it
what
to
we
you.
do here
It's
is
huge.
condensing it and trying to make an interesting evening out of it instead of a
We
thick
didn't
book.
do the coin flip.
No, we didn't do a coin flip. You want to do
Oh.
that? We can do it.
I don't have a coin.
All right.
Anyway,
All right. So, gentlemen, I guess that's about it.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Lawrence. You want to promote your channel? By the way, thank you for coming in last minute as a co-host there, Lawrence. I do appreciate it. Kyle will
Yeah,
be
no
back
problem.
tomorrow.
Yay!
Kyle's doing well. He's happy. He got some time away. He'll be back. He's raring to go. He says he loves everybody. Tells me to tell him he misses everybody, but he'll be back. Don't worry. We all
So,
know
Lawrence,
a
tell
little
us
time
about
away.
your channel.
Yeah,
ahead, Lawrence.
like I said at the beginning, my channel is Milwaukee Atheists, and I am currently working on a project with Jim Majors, and I always feel funny saying this, Chris Hansen from Bible History Skeptics.
Not the ones you guys are thinking of. Although he does like to say, "Here, please have a seat." I don't know why he does that, but he does say that a lot.
Yeah,
"Here, have
so
a seat."
we got some big stuff in the works. I'm just finishing up my semester, and so is Ruben. So we didn't post that much long form content in the past few months, but since we have about a month off, we have a lot of big things coming. We have a video on esoteric Nazism coming up, which is probably going to end up being about an hour long because we took a really deep dive into it. Got something on the Golden Calf narrative, the history of it, coming up, and then maybe something on Thales of Miletus. So we got some good stuff coming up.
Yeah. Well, my latest is very interesting
Yeah.
stuff. Excellent.
That sounds pretty
All right.
awesome. Well, with that, I think we're going to call it a night. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Like I said, Kyle will be back tomorrow. Not quite sure what's going on tomorrow. I'm going to leave it as an open thing tomorrow, so you just have to wait and see like we are what's going on tomorrow, because I'm not quite sure, because our schedule unfortunately hasn't been updating properly. I don't know what it is. Kyle is aware of the issue, but unfortunately we have a schedule that we all go by. It's not working properly, so tomorrow it's up in the air. So to find out tomorrow with the rest of us what the hell we were doing. It's going to be a potluck non-sequitur show, I think. So with that,
You know
thank
what
you guys for
happened
watching.
to the Catholic Church
What?
when their calendar stopped working?
Nothing good, I'm
Stop.
sure. I
Come on.
know how this stuff ends. It never ends well. So
No more. Someone ends up getting burnt.
So someone
All right.
ends up
Well, I
getting
think we're
Good
burned.
night,
Say
everybody.
goodnight.
Thanks, everybody.
Ciao.
Good night, all.
Non sequitur. Your facts are uncoordinated.